Do you think human history is a simple, straight line? From cavemen with primitive stone axes, to the very first farmers, then to the meticulous builders of the Egyptian pyramids, and finally directly to us, the proud and advanced residents of modern concrete megacities. Official science paints exactly this picture for us. It is convenient. It is logical. It is presented as completely undeniable. But what about megalithic cities lying hundreds of feet underwater, far beyond the reach of normal tides? What about perfectly carved stone terraces whose calculated age breaks every single geological model currently taught in universities? And what do we do with ruins built millennia before textbooks say humans first picked up a chisel to carve a stone? Today, we plunge into places where sunlight simply does not reach, places official historians prefer to actively ignore. We will see 3 architectural marvels at the bottom of the ocean that simply shouldn't be there under any known law of history. We will find a monument off the coast of Japan whose perfectly right angles make geologists nervously look away and change the subject. We will descend to a sunken city in India whose radiocarbon age crosses out the entire accepted timeline of the ancient world. And in our grand finale, we will drop to the crushing bottom of the Caribbean Sea, where something so incredibly ancient rests that it completely shatters our fundamental understanding of reality itself. Ready? We begin our descent. Our first coordinates take us to the very edge of the Japanese archipelago, Yonaguni Island, a tiny, wind-swept patch of land standing as the last frontier before Taiwan. This is the exact place where the vast Pacific Ocean meets the volatile East China Sea. In the winter of 1986, a local dive operator named Kihachiro Aratake was actively looking for new, uncharted spots to observe schools of migrating hammerhead sharks. He swam out far beyond the usual safe reef line. The water was crystalline. He looked down into the abyss, and his breath caught in his throat. Rising majestically from the ocean floor, resting at a depth of roughly 25 meters, was a massive, imposing stone structure, a true monolith, a stepped pyramid. It was not a natural coral reef, and it was certainly not a random pile of eroded boulders. It was a colossal, meticulously terraced platform. It featured vast, flat surfaces. It displayed perfectly straight, sharp edges. It boasted absolute, uncompromising 90-degree corners. Imagine a modern sports stadium carved flawlessly from a single, continuous piece of bedrock. That is the sheer scale of the Yonaguni Monument. It spans 50 meters in length and stretches 20 meters wide. From certain angles, it looks exactly like an ancient ziggurat from Mesopotamia. From others, it looks like a grand ceremonial center. Ultimately, it looks like a complex architectural blueprint, permanently turned to stone. Official science reacted exactly as you would expect. Geologists arrived, took a brief look, and swiftly delivered their final verdict. It is a natural formation, merely tectonic activity. They claimed that local sandstone naturally fractures along remarkably straight geometric planes. They argued that the strong, relentless ocean currents of the region simply washed away all the loose, fractured rock over centuries, leaving behind what only appears to be a stepped pyramid. Case closed. Move along, there is absolutely nothing to see here. This explanation works perfectly on paper, until you actually dive down into the water and look closer for yourself. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura has spent 20 years relentlessly diving at the Yonaguni site. He has carefully mapped every single inch of the submerged structure, and he points out glaring anomalies that natural, random geological fracturing simply cannot explain. First, consider the steps. They are far too regular. They are entirely too symmetrical. A geological fracture might create a straight, linear break, but it absolutely does not create a continuous, proportional staircase wrapping perfectly around an exterior corner. Second, look at the parallel trenches. Deep, precise, unbroken grooves carved directly into the flat stone surfaces. They look exactly like ancient quarry marks. They look like a deliberate, active worksite where massive stone blocks were systematically extracted and moved. Third, the archway. A perfectly formed, undeniable stone gateway leading directly into the main complex. Blind nature does not carve functional arches with flat, parallel inner walls facing each other. And then there is the surrounding environment. Kimura found what looks undeniably like a carved stone head, staring blankly into the current. A carved stadium seating area, a connecting network of paved roads, a functioning drainage canal. Nature is an artist, yes, but nature does not engineer and build complex municipal drainage canals. The most terrifying part of this entirely ignored mystery? The age. The absolute last time this massive structure was sitting above sea level, breathing open air, was during the peak of the last ice age. That means it sank beneath the waves roughly 10,000 years ago. If the Yonaguni Monument is man-made, it was built by an organized civilization that existed 5 full millennia before the Great Pyramids of Giza were even a concept. A civilization fully capable of carving a 50-meter, precision-cut monolith out of solid bedrock. Who were they? Where did they go? The heavy stones of Yonaguni remain entirely silent. The relentless ocean currents sweep over the ancient terraces, slowly erasing the physical evidence year by agonizing year. Official science turns its head away, pretending it is just rocks. But the anomaly remains. Let's move to our next coordinate, the Arabian Sea, the western sun-baked coast of India, the treacherous waters of the Gulf of Kambat. For thousands of years, ancient Indian mythology spoke reverently of Dwarka, the legendary golden city of Lord Krishna, a city constructed of pure gold and silver, built majestically on the coast, glowing with unimaginable divine wealth. According to the ancient Sanskrit epic, the Mahabharata, when Lord Krishna finally left this mortal world, the great ocean rose up in anger and swallowed the entire city whole in a single, devastating day. A beautiful myth, a traditional moral story about the impermanence of material wealth, a bedtime fairy tale, until the pivotal year of 2001. The National Institute of Ocean Technology in India was actively conducting routine, highly mundane acoustic surveys in the Gulf of Kambat. They were simply measuring regional pollution levels in the water. They were absolutely not looking for lost history. The sonar pinged into the depths. The acoustic data returned to the ship. The specialized operators stared blankly at their glowing screens in absolute disbelief. 36 meters down in the dark water, 120 feet below the crashing surface, the sonar mapped out massive, unmistakable geometric shapes, huge, perfectly rectangular foundations, a massive interconnected grid pattern, the undeniable mathematical layout of a sprawling ancient city. The ruins stretched for an astonishing 9 kilometers along what clearly used to be an ancient, dried-up riverbank. They immediately sent down heavy dredgers. They pulled up physical artifacts, broken pottery shards, precisely carved stone tools, ornamental beads, fossilized human bones, and, most importantly, a single intact piece of wood. Wood is the absolute holy grail of underwater archaeology. Wood can be accurately radiocarbon dated. They carefully sent the extracted sample to 2 separate, entirely independent scientific laboratories, one facility in Hyderabad, India, and one facility in Germany. The results came back. The scientists checked the impossible numbers. They checked them again. The wood was 9,500 500 years old. Stop for a second. Truly grasp the weight of this number. 9,500 years old. According to every official history textbook in the world, 9,500 years ago, humans were primitive, nomadic hunter-gatherers. The very first rudimentary cities in Mesopotamia were still 4,000 years in the distant future. The great Indus Valley civilization did not even exist yet. Nobody on the entire planet was building 9-kilometer megacities with complex geometric street grids. Nobody.
The discovery of submerged Dwarka is not just another interesting archaeological find, it is an academic earthquake. It completely shatters the entire established timeline of human development. If a sprawling metropolis existed in India 9,500 years ago, our textbooks are not just slightly wrong, they are completely, fundamentally, and laughably incorrect.
The official academic response? Total silence. Awkward hesitation. Some desperate archaeologists claim the wood piece was just random driftwood that coincidentally happened to sink over a natural grid-like geological formation. A highly convenient coincidence. But what about the ancient pottery? What about the carved beads? What about the massive, organized grid structure clearly mapped by the sonar? The ocean swallowed Dwarka. It swallowed the evidence. The incredibly murky, violent, and tidal waters of the Gulf of Combat make actual diving incredibly dangerous and nearly impossible. Visibility is constantly near zero. Formal excavation is physically impossible. The city just sits there, in the crushing dark, a ghost metropolis, waiting for a scientific community brave enough to actually acknowledge it. A massive city that completely predates all known history. A religious myth proven absolutely real by modern sonar. An impossible, forgotten epoch buried under 120 feet of churning water. We descend further to our final destination, the most inexplicable, the most deeply terrifying mystery of them all. The Caribbean Sea, the western tip of Cuba. The year is 2001. Marine engineer Paulina Zalitsky and her highly trained team are working tirelessly on a specialized survey ship. They are meticulously mapping the ocean floor for the Cuban government. They are officially looking for sunken Spanish galleons filled with gold. They are utilizing state-of-the-art advanced side-scan sonar equipment. They are operating in deep water, very, very deep, between 600 and 750 meters down. That is 2,000 to 2,500 feet below the ocean surface. Sunlight never reaches this far down. The physical pressure is absolutely crushing. The environment is entirely alien. The sonar sweeps the muddy bottom. The image feeds directly into the glowing monitors on the ship. Zalitsky looks closely at the screen. She completely stops breathing. Rising abruptly from the flat, featureless, and barren ocean floor is a massive, sprawling complex of structures. Highly symmetrical, mathematically geometric, completely immense. The sonar clearly shows enormous cut stone blocks. Some are perfectly rectangular, some are perfectly circular. They are arranged in a complex, intentional layout that spans over 2 entire square kilometers. The acoustic shadows indicate massive structures that look exactly like pyramids, huge stepped pyramids, strikingly similar to those found deep in the jungles of Central America. But these are massive, and they are made of smooth, pale stone that looks remarkably like polished granite. Zalitsky quickly sends down a remotely operated vehicle, a robotic submarine equipped with a heavy-duty camera. The ROV finally reaches the bottom. The bright lights turn on. The camera transmits the raw video back to the surface. The resulting images are blurry, but absolutely undeniable. Giant blocks of stone, cut with laser precision, stacked deliberately upon each other. Some blocks are an astonishing 2 to 5 meters long. They are completely devoid of normal marine growth. They look polished. They look heavily engineered. This is not a natural reef. This is not a weird geological quirk. This is a city, a mega-city. But here is the massive problem, the impossible, physics-breaking, reality-bending problem. The depth, 2,000 feet. During the peak of the last ice age, global sea levels were indeed much lower, about 120 meters lower. That fact perfectly explains Yonaguni. That fact perfectly explains Dworka. But it absolutely does not explain Cuba. At 600 meters down, we are looking at a completely different, mind-bending geological timescale. For dry land to physically sink 600 meters, it takes massive tectonic movements, spanning millions of years. Millions. Geologists are instantly faced with an impossible paradox. Option A, the sprawling pyramid structures were built millions of years ago, long before humans even existed, according to the official evolutionary timeline. Option B, a cataclysm of completely unimaginable violence ripped the Earth wide open and swallowed an entire island complex in a matter of hours, dropping it half a kilometer down into the dark abyss. Neither option fits the neat official narrative. Both options are completely terrifying to mainstream academia. National Geographic showed massive initial interest. Huge expeditions were planned. The entire world held its breath. And then, absolutely nothing. The funding mysteriously dried up. The complicated political situation between Cuba and the United States made joint operations difficult. The incredible story faded quietly from the major headlines. The underwater city was abandoned once again, left entirely alone in the crushing, silent dark. Why? Why is there not a massive, well-funded international effort to explore a literal pyramid complex at the bottom of the ocean? Why is there not a single written line in the historical chronicles about a sprawling civilization in the Caribbean capable of building massive megaliths? Because fully acknowledging it breaks the entire system. It shatters the timeline. It requires actively rewriting absolutely everything we think we know about exactly who we are and exactly where we came from. 3 locations. 3 completely submerged anomalies. Yonaguni, the terraced monolith that entirely defies natural fracturing. Dworka, the 9-kilometer urban grid that predates civilization by 4 millennia. Cuba, the deep-water pyramids that fundamentally shouldn't exist on this planet. What do they all share? They share the absolute silence of the scientific establishment. They share the crushing, eternal weight of the ocean. And they share a single, completely undeniable truth. Human history is absolutely not a straight line. It is a violent cycle of dramatic rises and devastating falls, of global amnesia, of absolute forgetting. We are not the first. We are just the ones who happened to survive this time. The massive ruins of our forgotten predecessors are down there right now, buried deep in the mud, swallowed forever by the waves, waiting silently. Stop for a second. Look closely at what we uncovered today. 3 total impossibilities. 3 haunting ghosts of a completely forgotten epoch. Which of these 3 mysteries shook your fundamental understanding of the world the most? Was it the terrifying precision of Yonaguni, the completely impossible age of Dworka, or the physics-breaking depth of the Cuban pyramids? Tell me right now in the comments below.